The first time I realized just how far Karen would go to control the neighborhood, it wasn't during one of her rants at the HOA meeting. It was while I was standing ankle-deep in water, trying to stop a sudden gush pouring from her lawn and straight into my driveway. She was screaming at me, accusing me of flooding her yard on purpose, when in reality, her own sprinkler system had broken. That moment, that ridiculous watery scene, was the first sign that Karen wasn't just a difficult neighbor. She was going to make my life hell. I had installed 2 small security cameras on the corners of my house a few weeks earlier. Nothing fancy, just standard doorbell-style cameras that captured the driveway and front yard. They weren't pointed at Karen's property, but she became obsessed with them the second she noticed. She claimed they were invading her privacy, that I was spying on her, even though the only thing the cameras picked up were the mailman, delivery trucks, and my dog chasing squirrels. Her first move was to storm up my porch uninvited and pound on my door, yelling that I needed to take them down immediately. She said if I didn't, she would make sure the HOA and the police handled it. I stayed calm, explained that the cameras were legal and only monitored my property, and shut the door, but I knew Karen well enough to realize this wasn't over. A week later, she escalated. I came home from work to find a bright orange notice taped to my garage door with HOA violation, in all caps. It accused me of unauthorized surveillance equipment. I knew instantly Karen had written it herself. She was the HOA vice president, but she didn't have the authority to issue violations without a board vote. Still, she thought the paper would scare me. What she didn't know was that I had already spoken to the local police department before even installing the cameras. They had assured me it was perfectly legal as long as the cameras didn't point directly into someone else's home. So, when Karen finally called the police on me, demanding they come to my property and force me to remove them, I was more curious than worried. When the police cruiser pulled up in front of my house, Karen was already outside, arms crossed, foot tapping like she was about to conduct an orchestra. She rushed over to the officers the second they stepped out, pointing dramatically at my cameras and shouting, "He's spying on me. He has no right to film my private property." The officers looked at each other, then at me, and I could already see the smirk tugging at one of their mouths. I calmly walked over, greeted them, and explained that my cameras were angled to cover my driveway, porch, and yard. Nothing more. One officer asked if I had footage to prove it, and I nodded, pulling up the live feed on my phone. It showed nothing but my empty driveway and the street beyond. Not a single inch of Karen's property was in view. The officer tilted his head toward Karen. "Ma'am, these cameras are pointed at his property, not yours." Karen's face flushed red. "But they could record me if I'm in my yard. That's an invasion of privacy." The second officer chuckled. "Ma'am, if you're outside, it's not private. That's the law. He's fully within his rights." I could see Karen's confidence crumble. She stammered, searching for some other accusation to throw at me. But the officers weren't buying it. One of them even said, "Honestly, these cameras probably make the neighborhood safer. You should be glad he has them." That line nearly made me laugh out loud. Karen's expression soured as if she had swallowed a lemon whole. She tried to argue again, but the officers cut her off. "Unless you can prove he's pointing cameras directly into your windows, which he isn't, this is not a police matter." They handed me back my phone, shook my hand, and left without even taking a report. Karen, however, didn't let it go. She stood in the street, glaring at me like I had committed some personal betrayal. For a few days afterward, she was unusually quiet, which worried me more than her yelling. Karen was never quiet unless she was plotting something. Sure enough, I soon noticed she had started talking to neighbors, pulling them aside in her yard or at the mailbox, whispering while pointing toward my cameras. And then, like clockwork, rumors began trickling back to me. Rumors that I was recording people's children, storing footage of families, even selling it online. Karen had found a new way to attack me. And this time, she was trying to turn the entire neighborhood against me. At first, I brushed off the rumors. I knew they were absurd, and I figured my neighbors would see right through them. But within a week, I started noticing subtle changes. People who used to wave as they walked by now avoided eye contact. A couple of families who let their kids play near the street suddenly kept them indoors. Even my next-door neighbor, who I'd helped fix a broken fence last year, seemed distant when I tried to say hello. Karen was clever in her own twisted way. She never came out directly and accused me in public. Instead, she planted seeds of doubt. A hushed comment here, a dramatic sigh there, just enough to make people wonder. She even went as far as telling the HOA board that I had installed unauthorized surveillance systems with suspicious intent. That's when I realized she wasn't just trying to annoy me anymore. She was trying to isolate me. If she could convince enough neighbors that I was some kind of creep, then she could pressure the HOA to force me to take the cameras down. But what Karen hadn't counted on was that I kept every interaction, every notice, every conversation carefully documented. My cameras weren't just for protection against porch pirates. They also served as proof, and that proof was about to come in handy. One evening, I got an email from the HOA announcing a special meeting to discuss community safety concerns. I knew immediately it was about me. Karen must have pulled some strings to get it scheduled. Instead of panicking, I prepared. I downloaded footage clips showing exactly what my cameras recorded: Amazon deliveries, my dog chasing his tail, and cars passing by. I even pulled up the city ordinance and the police department's written statement confirming my setup was perfectly legal. The night of the meeting, the room was tense. Karen stood at the front like a queen addressing her subjects, spinning her story about how I was endangering the privacy of the neighborhood. She gestured toward me dramatically, insisting the board needed to take action immediately. When she finished, I calmly stood, plugged my laptop into the projector, and hit play. The room watched as nothing but harmless footage appeared on the screen. Then I read aloud the email from the police stating my cameras were lawful. The silence that followed was deafening. Karen's jaw tightened, and for the first time, I saw uncertainty in her eyes. She wasn't used to being challenged with facts. And the look on the neighbors' faces told me the tide was turning against her. But what happened after that meeting would push Karen completely over the edge. After the meeting, Karen's grip on the neighborhood began to slip. The other board members didn't outright side with me, but they definitely weren't backing her anymore. Some neighbors even apologized quietly on their way out, admitting they hadn't believed the rumors but hadn't wanted to get involved. For the first time in weeks, I felt like things might calm down. But Karen wasn't finished. When she lost the crowd, she decided to take matters into her own hands. A few nights later, just past midnight, my phone buzzed with an alert from the motion sensor. I opened the live feed, and there she was, Karen herself, creeping across my driveway with something shiny in her hand. At first, I thought she might just be snooping, but then she raised the object and swung. The sound of cracking plastic echoed as she tried to smash the camera. What she didn't realize was that the second camera, mounted higher up, caught the whole thing in crystal clear detail. I didn't even bother going outside. Instead, I called the non-emergency police line and told them my neighbor was vandalizing my property. By the time officers arrived, Karen was still in my yard, yelling at the busted camera like it had personally insulted her. When the police confronted her, she immediately launched into a tirade: "He's filming me. He's stalking me." I had no choice but to defend my privacy. The officers didn't look impressed. I stepped forward and offered them the live footage. On the screen, Karen could be seen marching across my yard, weapon in hand, deliberately smashing the camera. It was undeniable. One officer turned to her and said, "Ma'am, this isn't defending yourself. This is vandalism." Karen's face went pale. She sputtered, tried to argue, but the evidence was too strong. The officers issued her a citation on the spot. The sight of Karen being written up, standing on my driveway in her slippers while the whole neighborhood peeked out their windows, was something I'll never forget. From that day on, Karen kept her distance. The HOA backed off completely, and the rumors died overnight. My cameras stayed right where they were. And if anything, my neighbors seemed relieved to know they were there. Ironically, the same cameras Karen fought so hard against ended up protecting me from her and proving exactly who she was to everyone else. In the end, the police didn't just laugh at her complaint. They made sure she paid the price for it. If you enjoyed this story, make sure to hit the like button, subscribe to the channel, and drop a comment below. What would you have done if you were in my shoes? Your support helps me bring more stories like this to you.